I'm Michael Sligh. I work with the Rural Advancement Foundation International. We're based in North Carolina. We trace our history back to the 1930s. We work on policy, practice, and market development. Our goal is justice, equity, and sustainability in agriculture. So when I speak of we, that's who I'm talking about. I come from a long line of family farmers and ranchers in West Texas. I farmed the decade of the 1970s. Went organic. We realized that growing organic was not impossible, and in fact it was actually quite fun, and it was more fun than farming conventionally. But we didn't have a market, and we could supply more than the market demand, and we also had no common standards, so we could not move products across state lines, across country lines, because there was no agreement on the standards. So I thought, well, I'll take a little break from farming and go help create those standards. Oh, I think it's quite essential that all of the sectors in organic have what I would call, being from West Texas, a watering hole. We need a place where we are not in isolation, where we can come together, we can build synergy, we can learn from others. Innovation needs to accelerate, and it only happens by kind of being involved in the same room and challenging each other and hearing their successes and their challenges. Historically, we are isolated by sector within the supply chain. The farmers tend to talk to themselves, the workers tend to talk to themselves, the suppliers talk to themselves. What is needed is more of this conversation across the supply chain that is honest, that is thoughtful, that is respectful, that is hearing from each other, and then I think we can find common solutions. We've been doing some experimenting along that line, where we help develop a set of social standards to go along with organic in the North American context, because we're in a very different market in many ways than other parts of the world, where the expectations of the consumers are quite high as to what they expect. In many ways, they already expect that we're doing things that maybe we're not quite there on yet. So we've been trying to experiment on how can we add in that component in a way that is not standard fatigue, that is not a burden on the system that's unsurmountable. And so we've been looking in that model and trying it in a few supply chains based on the idea of transparency and good faith negotiations. And we're getting some traction on that, and we think that there is room in the marketplace for that kind of model where it's built on transparency, it's built on open negotiations, and it's not one that's so set in stone that it can't be flexible, because many times in a North American setting, the farmer may not have health insurance. So to expect the farmer to have all of the workers to have health insurance, they have to recognize where they are. The farm may have great debt. Maybe they didn't inherit the farm. Maybe they have a big land payment. These kinds of transparencies with the workers and with the buyers is critical, because I don't think in many cases the buyer understands really what the farmer's cost of production is. And so we've been really getting at this issue of helping farmers to do a better job of articulating their full costs of production, because they must also have a return to management, a return to their business. They must pay for their land, and indeed they want to also pay their workers a living wage. I think in many ways what we're kind of embedded in is a larger predatory supply system that pits each sector of the supply chain against each other. And so I think in order for organic and sustainable agriculture and textiles to move forward, we have to forge a new model, one that's built on cooperation across the supply chain, opposed to one which is predatory. Data continues to show that increasingly consumers are asking more and more questions about their food and fiber and fish supply chains. They don't want to know less, they want to know more. It used to just be, where did it come from? And then it was, how was it grown? And now it's gone to, so how were the workers treated? How were the farmers treated? They want to know more, and I think that trend is not going to go away. The consuming public, which has been seeped in the idea of cheap food, cheap fiber, cheap is good. And at the end of the day, cheap is not cheap. We can't ignore the human component. It is actually key. We can't get to sustainability with environmental stewardship alone. It must have justice as the lubricant. That's what we need to get there. You just cannot make a living in conventional agriculture as a family-size operation. The numbers are just not there. The costs are too high and the return is too low. Organic represents that value-added opportunity. If you do more environmental and socially responsible activities, you should be rewarded for that. We would like to see more incentives to move this direction.